Okay, ICD working diagnosis. CCO student asks, is it acceptable to code a working diagnosis? And they got that from their textbook that she's working on. For the ICD code, do you code the symptoms or the working diagnosis? A very good question. And for physician and outpatient coders, we do not code working diagnoses, only definitive ones. So if there is no definitive diagnosis, we code the signs and symptoms. It's totally legal to do that as they're being worked up. And inpatient, they are able to code the working diagnosis. So that's very good thinking. And how do we know this? Is it just because Laureen and Alicia say so? No, we've got our ICD guidelines that you want to become familiar with. And I think I had pulled them up. Okay, so hopefully you can see that okay. It says if the diagnosis documented at the time of discharge is qualified as, is this where I'm supposed to be reading? No.
Well, yes, and I think it's so important they mention it several times too. Because they do it in Section A, codes for signs and symptoms, and I think they do it in Section 3, reporting additional diagnoses. So it all reads like that, though.
Oh, in both places. I see what you're saying. All right, yeah. So H, uncertain diagnosis. If the diagnosis documented at the time of discharge is qualified as probable, suspected, likely, questionable, possible, we call it equivocal language. Could be, maybe, kind of, sort of. Code the condition as if it existed or was established. This is what they're telling inpatient coders to do, okay? So we want to go down to section.
It's in Section 3, yeah, uncertain diagnosis.
Okay. This is for outpatient services, so physician and outpatient. In the outpatient setting, the term first listed diagnosis is used in lieu of principal diagnosis. Okay. Diagnoses often are not established at the time of the initial encounter. It may take 2 or more visits before the diagnosis is confirmed. The most critical rule involves beginning the search for correct code assignment through the alpha index. Okay, we know that. I'm trying to find where it says the signs and symptoms.
I think it's down just a little bit farther. And the wording is almost exactly like, there you go.
So codes that describe symptoms and signs as opposed to diagnoses are acceptable for reporting purposes when a related definitive diagnosis has not been established or confirmed. So a working diagnosis can be confirmed later on, but if it's still a working diagnosis, it's not confirmed yet. So we don't code it until it's confirmed. Okay? So that answers that one. Okay.
I always tell my students you don't want to give them diabetes before they actually are diagnosed with diabetes.
Right, yes, and that's a very good point. If you, I used to, well, I still do, but when I first had them, migraines, they thought it was MS, and so all of my forms said ROMS, rule out MS. Well, along the way, they actually put in my chart like I had it, which I didn't. Come to find out it was a complicated migraine. So when I went to go get, I don't know, insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, something like that, they were like denying me. I'm like, and this is when I was a lot younger than I was, and come to find out that was why. And it took a lot of work to get that off and them to realize, no, that was a working diagnosis. It was a rule out diagnosis. So, and working and rule out, they're similar, but it's kind of like the opposite. The doctor, when they say rule out, is this thing that could be, but probably not, and they just want to rule it out and get it off the table. Where a working diagnosis is basically the physician kind of really thinks that that's what it is, and they're just trying to get confirmation.
Get more CPC exam tips, coding certification training, and CEU credits. Go to www.codingcertification.org.